defense for PopFlyPopShop.com, Carl Moose Eller. In the realm of football, there stood a superhero-like force, none other than Carl Moose Eller. As the cornerstone of the Minnesota Vikings' formidable defense, he charged onto the field with the raw strength of a moose, tackling rivals with a heroic fervor. The Purple People Eaters, led by the indomitable Moose, struck fear into the hearts of opponents, a band of superheroes united against any offensive onslaught. With numerous Pro Bowls and All-Pro honors adorning his legacy, Moose showcased unwavering determination. Beyond the gridiron, he inspired and uplifted, leaving a superhero-like impact on his community. Humble and kind, Carl Moose Eller remains an emblem of inspiration, a legendary hero whose story echoes through the ages.
Hello, hello, welcome. My name is Daniel Jacob Holrein, and I am here with a real-life superhero, Pro Football Hall of Famer, College Football Hall of Famer, 6-time Pro Bowler, 5-time first-team All-Pro, second-team All-Pro, NFL Defensive Player of the Year, 1971, a member of the Minnesota Vikings Ring of Honor, NFL 70s All-Decade Team, superhero Carl Eller. Carl, thank you for joining me today.
Well, you're welcome, Daniel. It's really my pleasure. I'm telling you all the stats and all the things that you read off there. Man, anybody would be amazed by that. I'm amazed by my own career.
And that's a short list. I had to edit that list down. There's a lot more to be proud of.
So happy to be here.
Awesome. I'm happy to have you. So us kids, we looked up to athletes like superheroes. You know, we were little kids, and I still am in my 40s looking up at athletes, you know, with 10-year-old eyes, and those athletes are still superheroes. So we'll talk a lot about superheroes and how that relates to athletes. But first, every superhero has an origin story. So let's talk a little bit about the Carl Eller origin story. So you're featured here as Moose. Did you ever engage with comic books when you were a kid?
Well, I did. Comic books were kind of a thing that I didn't have very often, but I really liked them when I got them. Of course, I like Superman and all the other comic book superheroes and stuff like that. But I think I liked Dick Tracy. You know, Dick Tracy was a guy. He had the watch that would give him different times or locations or stuff like that. He was a super detective, so I liked the way he would solve crimes.
That's fantastic. So a lot of times athletes aren't into comic books because they're out on the field. So how did you get interested in sports? So going from Dick Tracy to the football field, how did that happen?
Well, I lived next door to a it was a baseball stadium, and I grew up there. I grew up right on the corner, and across the street was the baseball stadium. And the All-Stars used to come and play there. You know, the All-Stars would play there once a year, all the Mickey Mays and Willie Mays and people like that. But I did not know a lot about football, and I was on this side of the stadium, and on the other side of the stadium was a high school, and they practiced there and used the field for practice and games. But they also did other events there. But the one that I noticed was one day I heard them kicking the football. They would start to practice off. It was kind of reminds you of the old comic book. Some of the heroes we'd hear boom, 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 or whatever. But I heard this, and I climbed the fence, and I got a look at what they were doing. They were kicking something. I didn't really know what it was, but they were kicking a football, and that's where the thump was coming from. You know, I could hear it from my, house, and I was amazed that was the sound of it. So it sort of intrigued me, but that was as much as I knew about it then. But they did use that field for practice.
So there is the Carl Eller origin story right there. Did you have, so football was something that you discovered. Were there any aspirations that you had that was beyond football? Any unconventional career paths that was interesting to you?
Not really. I kind of think that even though I lived there, I was away from the community a little bit, and I didn't really have a lot of superheroes at that time, or didn't know about a lot of superheroes. But one guy was from my community and lived right down the street from me, and it was a guy named Norman King, and he was an exception because he ended up being the principal of one of the high schools, not the high school, one of the middle schools in my community. And the thing about him, he had an image that was kind of an impeccable image. He was a sharp guy. He dressed well, and he had achieved really some great things. Being the principal of a school was really amazing. So I looked up to him because the way he dressed and the way he carried himself was very different. Plus, he was an athlete too. He was a track athlete.
That's fantastic. If you're just joining us, we're talking live with Carl Eller, and what we're talking about today is this piece right here that is available on popflypopshop.com for just a few more days. You can grab it until August 13th, and then after that, it is retired. So you have the option to get this piece either unsigned or autographed and inscribed with the Hall of Fame inscription by NFL legend Carl Eller here. So diving into what I find probably most interesting about how superheroes and athletes are related. Superheroes, they have their alter egos, and they assume these alter egos, whenever their abilities are needed. So I'm always curious about athletes, and you had a nickname. Did you feel like you had an alter ego on the field? There was another version of yourself that emerged when you were in the game?
Well, I think the name Moose came up, but it came from an unlikely source. I thought it was from a guy in the community. I think his name was Rob or something like that, but I'm not sure. But anyway, we would go to the Happy Hill Gardens over at the rec center in my neighborhood, and I had to walk several blocks through that. It wasn't like convenient. So when I went over there, that's where other kids were, and they played football, and so they would choose sides, and so you would get a chance to run the ball or carry the ball. And when I ran the ball, one of the guys who would say, or he said, looks like a big old moose running the ball there. And of course, I was a little bit large, not much. There was no excuse for not getting tackled, except I was a speedy, shifty guy. But anyway, I would run the ball, and he would say, like, looks like a big old moose running into the ball. And that's where I got the nickname Moose. And that's where it started.
Now, did you embrace it as if it was like a persona that it would intimidate your opponents?
I didn't think it would intimidate my opponents, but I liked the nickname because it was a little bit unusual, and I thought it was a good nickname. As a moose was kind of an abstract character where I come from, in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. People really didn't know what a moose was. It was kind of like mysterious, and so, but everybody knew it was a powerful, strong animal, and I liked that, and I kind of like the mystery behind it too, because of not being from Minnesota, a place where they were known or common. The name Moose was kind of intimidating.
I would say so. I would be nervous if anyone called Moose was headed my direction. And that sort of That leads into the next question. So you were Moose, but you were part of a unit called the Purple People Eaters. So if Moose didn't intimidate you, the Purple People Eaters coming at you would. Did the team nickname did that affect your interactions with other teams or your players or even your own team? How did that affect your game?
Well, Dan, you jumped on the head a little bit. That was, first of all the high school, Atkins High School, and then Minnesota, who I was a Gopher. But the name stuck with me. Moose, I was called all through for the rest of the period through high school and through a college as well, so I didn't get rid of it. And I don't know how my college teammates found out that was the name, except that maybe they visited Winston-Salem or something like that. But the name stuck with me. And then when I got drafted from the Minnesota Vikings, they didn't call the Purple People Eaters right away. It took a little bit, maybe my second or third year. But the idea, we were kind of a defensive unit. And the idea of Purple People Leaders came because they wanted to treat us as a group when we came in. And some of the players didn't like that. I remember Jim Marshall would say, we're individuals who are not a part of a group or something like that. But the fans loved it, and they call us that, they're Purple People Leaders. I didn't think it was intimidating or ferocious at the time, but it was a name that stuck because I liked the color purple. We had the uniforms and the jerseys and all that. And it was kind of, we had a name that was a big part of it.
I love it. I love it. Let me add this real quick. And if you're just joining this is the Carl Eller Moose print. It is available for just a few more days on popshop.com up until this Sunday, August 13th. And once it's retired for good. So grab it before you can't. Carl, I want to ask you about your moment. Superheroes have iconic moments that kind of define their legacy. Can you recall a play or a game that was kind of your heroic moment on the football field?
Well, I think the moment that I can recall is a moment where I got a touchdown, and it was heroic in a number of senses, in a number of ways. And that is the fact that I scored a touchdown was very different. The feeling you get when you score a touchdown, all the players come running behind you and congratulate you and do all that stuff. And that felt good. But I had never scored a touchdown before, which was some players do that all the time, like running backs or whatever. But as the defensive player, you never even touched the ball. And so when I got a touchdown, it was, I think, against Green Bay, and I scored a touchdown. And I had been studying this guy for a long time because Forrest Gregg was a player I'm thinking about. But it was hard to beat that player, get to the passer. And so when I got to the touchdown, it was a true mark of excellence on my part because I had not only beat him, I didn't get to the passer because threw the ball, but I intercepted the ball and I scored a touchdown. It was a great moment. I love that moment. So I think that is probably really a highlight of my career.
I can imagine. Now here's something that I find interesting too. Superheroes undergo growth and transformation, and I find this interesting as it translates to athletes. And every sport is like this. When the rookies first start out, their body is in the prime condition, but they don't have the knowledge and the experience and the acumen. And as they approach their later years in their career, now they have the wisdom, now they have the knowledge, now they have the experience, but their physical resilience has begun to wane. Can you paint us a portrait of how you handled that transformation?
Well, I think it's a very difficult transformation to handle personally, and you have to do it on your own.
Mhm.
And one thing that the National Football League or the colleges do not provide is they do not provide that transition, because for every athlete is different. I played a long time, I had a long career, but some have 1 year and they're out or not even making that team even.
Mhm.
And so you never know. And I think it depends on when you come out, how you transfer. And so, being in Minnesota, having played for the Gophers, playing for the Vikings as long as I did, it seemed like I knew almost everybody, because wherever I would go, people would say, "Hey, Moose, hey, Carl, we're big fans, we love you," or whatever. And you really get used to that. And then that continued a long time after I was playing, really. But the truth of the matter is, see, now I look at my body and the resiliency of my body is not what it used to be, obviously. But the also mentally, you want to be occupied. You want to be, sort of something that consumes you, something that it takes all of your energy, all of your enthusiasm, all of the emotion that you have.
Yeah. Right.
And football did that. Football would, you have to be totally engaged with it. You couldn't pick it up and you were ready to go. You had to commit yourself. And I miss that. I miss that. I miss that total commitment, because the guy across from me was also doing the same thing, and you weren't going to win or beat him or even be a good match if you were not really prepared or knew who you were facing.
Mhm.
And so, you don't have that in the real world, I guess. And so it took a long time to adjust. And I don't say that I really have adjusted yet, because there's nothing that really replaces
Yeah.
football. But you do find other things. I found other things like my pottery is one, working with clay and developing some kind of things that were original, creative. And that was important for me. And also, I was in other fields. I was in other fields of counseling and something of psychology, and I worked with other people in different areas of the community, and that was exciting. And so that gave me a real sense of purpose, and was something that I enjoyed. But still, the football, even though I don't participate, and you recognize my body is not the same as it was, in those days when you could run and jump and do all these things. Oh man, it was great. I felt like more like a Superman or superhero in those times, when I could do all those things and not get tired, or I could bump against something and knock it down or something like that. You really had superpowers, or at least you thought you did. I thought I did. And so it's a game that you still miss, and a game that you still have some commitment to, even though you're not involved.
Well, you are a superhero, eternal superhero to many, Carl. And I know you are a superhero, Carl. I know this. Now, I have a question for you. If the moose was a comic book character, would the moose be a superhero or supervillain?
Superhero, of course, of
Of
course,
course.
because the villain never would. You see, the important part of this, that I think that, and then talk about counseling, and I talk about my experience in that area, was they people always think the people that become the villain, or the crook, let's say, or they want to take the other way to stardom or prosperity or whatever it is, that they don't realize that, like, even if they have a new scheme, the the police, I like to say the gendarmes, the local gendarmes, which is French for policemen, I guess, but they are funded, continually funded. Every year they get new funds, and so they never run out. And you don't go off the books; you stay there until you are caught finally. And
Mm,
and so the villain has to support himself and do
mhm.
all this stuff and on his own, right, vitality, I guess. So the superhero is always caught. And it's not fiction because you see that in the comic books where the plan didn't go through or the plan didn't work or whatever. And the reason that it doesn't work is because they do not give up. They continue. Maybe they put you on the back shelf a little bit, but you can be, long time think you got away, but they made your fingerprint was there or something that tie you into that car. I mean, they find that out. Maybe it's years later. Well, see, I try to put this into the heads of guys that are around me, young people that I'm counseling or something like that. I try to tell them that you're not going to win, you know. And sometimes they see this, but often they cannot see that. They cannot see beyond their fingers. They feel like they have a great scheme and this scheme will work. I'm saying it won't work. It will not work. But they believe it will. And they go into it with all the vitality and all the enthusiasm to say they got a good idea. The truth is that like it does they will not stop until you are caught, until you stop or something. And I don't know any, I don't know, I clear myself, I don't know any gangsters at all. So, I really wanted to be the good guy. Yes, count me as a good guy.
That's no surprise, and I listening to your Hall of Fame speech, and just it's been important to you to invest in younger people and invest in the community that you're in, and that kind of leads to my last question for you, Carl, before we go. So superheroes, they leave a lasting legacy in the world that they inhabit. Now, how do you view your legacy, not only in the NFL but in the community at large?
Well, I think, as a guy, that winning was important to me, certainly on the athletic field. And being a good person, thinking that you can have a vision and I thought, in my community, I thought that I could change things just by my presence or just by a few words. And so I was a little bit naive for that. I can realize that now after decades of trying to work in the community. It's like there's that energy that exists out there. There is an energy that's continually fuel. The next guy come along, the younger guy comes along, and he sees a guy or sees a person. I'll say a guy, but he sees somebody doing something that's not totally legal, but he doesn't see the whole picture. Again, I go back to the previous conversation that he doesn't see the downside of that.
Right.
He doesn't see, well, oh, I'm going to end up in prison, or people will think I'm a villain. They think I'm not a good guy, and that I think is kind of what I fought for the right side. I wanted to do things the right way. I wanted to have an impression. It was a good impression on people that I met, no matter if we had 1 minute or an hour. Yeah, I wanted them to know that I really cared about the
Mhm.
community. And as individuals, I wouldn't necessarily say I cared about them as a person because I didn't know them,
Right.
but I was still warm and genuine with them. I let them know who I was, and I think that's very important because that is risky when another person knows who you are, what your values
Mhm.
are, what you stand for. They can come at you, but that was overcoming the fear of being friendly, of being
Yeah.
open,
Mhm.
letting us people know, hey, if I can, I will help you. If I can't, I will say so. And that's kind of the moniker that I want people to remember of me.
I love it, and mission accomplished. There's lots of love for you here in the comments here. Robert Cannon Geyser says Moose is a superhero. Great to see you. Lots of love for you, and it's such an honor for me to be able to talk to you. I get to talk to a real life superhero. So thank you, Carl, for your time. Thank you for working with me on this piece. This is one of my favorite pieces that I've done, and I'm glad it was with you. And so available for just a few more days on Popfly Pop Shop is this collaboration with Carl Moose Eller. Three options are available: regular options, autographed options, and autographed and inscribed options. This retires on Sunday, so grab it before you can't. And there's a few more places that you can go to continue your Carl Eller collection. There's carleller.com, where you can get merch, autographs, memorabilia. And there's also events listed on that page too. So Carl, it sounds like you're going to be at a meet and greet with Ed White this Sunday.
Yes, I will. I agree with Ed. Ed's one of my favorite people. He himself is an artist, and I love Eddie. So, the thing is, we have a football, and the guy's on the line. He's there to beat you, and but Ed is not the way at all. And I love him. So when we get together, it's great to talk about art and each other. That's really great. But Dan, I want to thank you for inviting me on. It's really a great opportunity for me not only to meet you, you seem like a wonderful guy, but also to kind of express myself. And I feel like I'm doing it without a way, because this is important to say, hey, look at me, I'm doing this, to wave my own flag. I have a hard time doing that, but it seemed like you have really let people know in somewhat who I am or who Carl Eller, where the moose comes from. And the moose is a good moose. And Dan, really appreciate the opportunity. Thank
Oh,
you very much. Thank you.
the honor is mine. And there's lots of folks out there waving the moose flags. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your collaboration, and thank you all for watching, for joining us for a few minutes. And again, this piece is available for just a few more days. Grab it before you can on popflypopshop.com. Carl, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, and good luck on Sunday.
Okay, thank you again, Dan.
All right, take care. Bye, everyone.